see. I'm going to go ahead and get started with folks introducing themselves. Just tell us who you are, where you come from, got any update you want to share. We'd like to hear it. I'll start with, I'm just going to go on my screen with Lisa.
Recording it.
Lisa Grundl.
Me, Lisa?
I'm sorry, Lisa Grundl.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry, I was having trouble with my mute button.
I was going to start singing.
I promise I won't do that. This is Lisa. I'm with Health Facilities Planning and Development, and we have been the group that has been taking and slicing and dicing the data all of you have shared with us over the last couple of years. And I have one of my updates is that we have someone else from our office on the phone today who I think is next based on how I see people going here. And she will be actually presenting. She did the last cutting and slicing of the data this time. So, and her name is Aimee, and I will let her introduce herself.
Go ahead, Aimee.
Okay, I'm Aimee Debs. Again, I work with Lisa. I'm relatively new to HFPD. I've been in the healthcare arena for about 15 years, and I'm very excited to work on this project.
All right, we're happy to have you here. How about Patrick?
Yes, good afternoon, Patrick Johnson. I'm with Jefferson County, affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and I want to draw everybody's attention to the fact that we recently went past Mental Illness Awareness Week. Every day and every week and every hour is mental illness awareness, whatever it is, and also to draw your attention for those in Port Townsend to the banner on Sims Way. We really like the three things on the bottom, and the last one is be kind. So anyway, there you have it.
Thank you. Good to have you here. I saw that banner. It looks great. Chief McCurry.
Me too. It's awesome.
Great.
Brightened my day, actually. Thank you.
Good, good.
How about Chief McCurry?
Tim McCurry, Cool Sea Fire, and the Mason County Fire Chiefs.
Peggy.
Hi, Peggy Webster, work in various capacities. I'm on the board of the Housing Authority, Peninsula Housing Authority.
Good to have you here. Cherish.
Hi, I'm Cherish Grundl, Executive Director of Olympic Community Action Programs, your community action agency for Jefferson and Carlbom counties. An update would be that if you'll see, the construction fence is up and the porta potties delivered to what will be the Seventh Haven location next to QFC here in Port Townsend. So that project is going to be breaking ground soon, but fencing already up. So that's always a great sign. In addition to that, we can report that everyone has exited the fairgrounds one way, shape, or form of another. There are some remaining abandoned vehicles there that are left to be dealt with. So, you know, whatever we can do to help the fairgrounds having that relationship. But folks, majority of whom are over now off of Mill Road, land owned by the county, managed by OLICAP. And they're in sort of a temporary juncture right now and moving to a more permanent plat that we're working on, facilities, things of that nature. I can put in the chat a link to some Google documents so that you can see some pictures and some plan documents as they exist at this time. And, you know, if anyone has any questions or anything about that, please let us know. Robin is our new shelter manager, sort of overseeing that space. You know, unfortunately, you know, there are rules and unfortunately, but there's rules and regulations at place here. And so, you know, it's going to be a little difficult, and some of our folks there are struggling to adapt to some of those changes. But, you know, staff is doing their best to try and work with them, reach out to advocates, you know, any of our partners, and just say, you know, please help us, you know, try and yeah, calm everyone as best as possible. Change is hard, but yeah, I think it's going quite well, and I'm always available to answer questions on that. And utility services, water will be an added utility to utility services available across the peninsula. And starting on the 18th, we'll have a scheduler system up and running. So when you call the agency or go online, you'll be able to schedule an appointment for those utility services. So that's my quick update.
You have a ton going on over there. Thanks, Jared.
Sure.
How about Jim?
This is Jim Novelli, Discovery Behavioral Healthcare, and we've got some new things happening here, quite a few things actually, but real briefly, the Sheriff's Navigator position is now based out of DBH, as well as the Recovery Navigator positions, which will hopefully be starting up in the next couple of weeks. And I won't say much about that. I don't want to steal Jolene's thunder like I stole Marty Ann's the last time, but I think it's really great that both these programs are going to be under one roof and be able to interact with each other and really bring much more cohesive approach to helping people that need services out there in the community. So I'll leave it at that. Maybe a future meeting, we can talk in more detail. So
Yeah, I'm going to set you up for one of those future meetings.
just let me know the dates I can be out of town. No, I'm sorry.
Let's see, Dr. Carlbom. Whoops, you know what? We can't hear you. While he's figuring that piece out, I'm going to go on to Jolene and come back to him.
Okay.
Hello, Jolene Kron, Deputy Administrator, Clinical Director with the Salish Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization. I will talk about some new stuff coming a little bit later in the agenda, but also wanted to mention to this group that we are recruiting for advisory board members, particularly out of Jefferson County. You should see within probably the next few weeks to a month newspaper, as well as other advertisements. So if anybody has any interest, please reach out to me, or if you have the opportunity to share that information with someone who may be interested, that would be great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jolene. It's an important role. Dr. Carlbom.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is David Carlbom. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. I'm the Medical Program Director for EMS, which means I supervise all the pre-hospital medical care, which includes a lot of behavioral health care that happens in Jefferson County. And I'm still relatively new in this role, maybe about a year. Looking forward to everyone's wisdom and learning from you all. So thanks for your hard work.
Thanks for being here. Sheriff Knoll.
Hello, everyone. Joe Knoll here. Don't have as much to say as everybody else does. Doing business as normal. I don't know how your roles have been going, but we've been having a lot of activity lately. People just kind of going wild, to put it mildly. I don't know what it is. The other thing, Dr. Carlbom, I saw he was on a meeting with us the other night and it was raining. It was the EMS meeting and he was on the ferry. And next thing I know, we lose him. Then he's out on his bicycle on the deck, ready to get off. And I was waiting for him to ride while still on the Zoom meeting, but that didn't happen. So anyway, good to see everybody.
Lori, can I just interject that I've noticed there's been a lot of very strange behavior around me lately, and my daughter informed me that Mercury is in retrograde. I don't know what that means, but maybe that's it.
Well, all right. We're going to see if that bears out as soon as it's over, if everything goes back to normal. How about Kelli?
Hi, good afternoon, Kelli Parcher. I'm here today representing AL 360 in the Pfeiffer house. In short, things are going great there. Our young folks are thriving and doing really well. Our neighbors love us, and we're looking forward to hopefully getting our youth and young adult community resource center up and going here soon.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Super. Apple Martine.
Hey, everybody. I am the new director at Jefferson County Public Health. I think I know most of you by now. Busy times. I've been holding two jobs, my old job and my new job, but I am happy to announce that we have hired someone internally, actually, after a big interview search.
Denise Banker, who most of you probably know, she's going to fill my former role as Community Health Division Director, and we're really happy about that. So is she. So we'll be looking for a new Timicum Empowered Teens Coalition coordinator, and we have a lot of jobs posted in the county, including at Public Health. So we've been in this crazy transition with COVID everywhere for us in terms of our work, including all of our usual work with all the grants that we do here in Public Health. We're also staffing a lot and onboarding new people. So change is good, change is hard. We're managing okay. We've come through a pretty intense COVID wave, the 5th wave. I'm sure the 6th wave will come all too soon, but we're in a bit of a dip, which is helping my staff out here take a little sigh of relief. Cautiously optimistic that it'll at least trend downward now for a few weeks, and then we'll see what happens with Thanksgiving. Cases down, testing needs are a little bit down, which is a good sign. We've had some distribution of COVID testing down south. Thank you, Chief McKern, for helping distribute COVID tests out of fire stations down south. It's a great connection. We appreciate it. And the schools are doing great with testing on site. It's been a struggle, but they're getting the hang of it. And we're collaborating a lot with the schools to help kids get tested as much as possible so they can stay in school more than be out on quarantine, which through the 5th wave was pretty touch and go as far as folks home on quarantine. Along with our staff changes, our programs they've got full panels right now, so that's great. Kelli, I wanted to tell you thank you. We got a referral to one of our services through the Pfeiffer House. That's really like perfect win for everybody, including the person who will get the assistance long-term, and many other options where we coordinate and collaborate. So anyway, thanks to you all for everything you do and how we have our touch points in common.
Thanks, Apple. David Fortino.
Hello, Dave Fortino, Chief of Corrections here at the Sheriff's Office. Not too much new going on at the jail. Kind of mimic a little bit about what the sheriff's saying. We're getting several, I guess, additional bookings the last couple of weeks. So, but beyond that, everything's kind of maintaining.
Okay. We'll have to check in with him on the whole Mercury thing. Commissioner Brotherton.
Hello, Greg Brotherton, Jefferson County Commissioner. And I guess I'll just share, along with Apple, we're going through transition at the Commissioner's office. And thanks to those here that sat on the panel last week, we had some interviews and are negotiating an offer to Ethan Rope from Seattle, who we think would make a fantastic county administrator and really further the values that everyone here lives. So thank you. Fingers crossed, everyone think good thoughts.
Lisa Thomas.
Hi there, everybody. Lisa Ray Thomas with the University of Washington Addictions, Drug and Alcohol Institute. And I guess the update would be we're just finalizing the training and support that we provide to state opioid response sites around the state, including many people on this call. And in fact, anybody that's working with people with opioid use disorder. So when that's final, I'll share it with Lori to distribute, and everybody is welcome.
Thank you. Brian Richardson.
Hello, Brian with Deaf House Recovery Cafe. One piece of news that we have is that we received funding through the Office of Crime Victims Advocacy. It's a grant that we had been accessing already to pay for some of our staff wages, and it was just after the 2-year funding cycle was up, we applied for it again. We actually didn't think we were going to get it because they had combined 2 different grants, and it was more competitive. So anyway, we were grateful for that. That means we can keep our staff on for another 2 years. So that's that for us.
That's great news. That's really good news. Gabby.
Gabby Cuddle, I'm the clinical supervisor of Believe in Recovery and the RSAT program in the jail. Don't have much new to report, just still working a lot. Things are ever changing and getting busier. One thing, OPHS does work out of my office now 1 day a week. They've rented space from Believe in Recovery in town in our ADU. So they are there. So they're able to serve not clients in town now, which is good because we're really close to that Mill Road place. So hoping to reach a lot of those people. And other than that,
Brings new meaning to location, location, location.
yeah, I don't know if it's good or bad, but we'll see.
Thanks, Gabby. Adam York.
Hi, Adam York. I'm a data analyst at Jefferson Healthcare. I think I'm the only one from the hospital here today. I don't work on the strategic planning or anything like that, so I can't share that level of news. But in the data side, I think I can say we're pretty excited. We're expanding we're strengthening our access to data, direct access to data, and it's going to be a while before we can really start reaping the benefits of it. A lot of planning, but super excited. So this is a big deal in the nerd world. So.
Well, we are very happy that you're the one that it's coming to us through. We're very lucky to have you there at the hospital. I'm looking, Brian Gleason.
Hi there, Brian Gleason, Jefferson County District Court and Behavioral Health Court team. I would just like to echo that I can tell that Mercury is in retrograde. We've had lots of interesting people in court. As we like to joke, it's been very mental healthy around our office recently. So it's been kind of a ride for the last couple of weeks. So yeah.
Thanks for
otherwise, we're just going forward. We did have our graduation. And we're probably going to have a couple more behavioral health court graduations. So I'll make sure that I send the invites out in the next couple months.
Thanks, Brian. You might notice next on our agenda is I asked Dr. Carlbom to come and sort of do a check-in with us. At our last meeting, a couple of folks reached back to me and said, hey, you know, I see a lot of people exhausted on that Zoom call that we were all just in, and sort of wondering how leaderships of various agencies were doing with this sort of ongoing slog of the pandemic. So I thought, since Dr. Carlbom is the one in charge of all things emergency here in our county, who better to come in and sort of listen in and talk to us a bit about leadership, exhaustion, pandemic, what to do next.
Thanks. I really didn't plan a lot. I was hoping just to hear from you all. I think two things that strike me is I think we're all tired of loss of intimacy, loss of connection, challenging patients, having the opportunity to interact with many more people who are under a lot of different life stress, and it leaks out in all sorts of different ways, whether that's substance use or more other behavioral health or mental health issues, or mental health manifesting as physical issues. I know the firefighters and EMTs and paramedics have been having to deal with that. And I guess I just want to check in with the group and see what, if any of you have sort of great success stories about, brief, of course, about how you have led your team through this, and any tips or tricks that you could share with others, myself included. And I'll tell you, my success story is that I have taken advantage of Zoom. I happen to run a large international conference around sepsis or severe infection. And for the first time last year in June, we were able to have participants from Uganda and Bangladesh and speakers from India who are world experts in their diseases that frankly couldn't come otherwise. And so it's super cool to make the world a little bit bigger. So I don't know if anyone has any tips or tricks or wisdom.
I don't really have anything like that, but It's funny when you said that. I don't know if I understood you right, but I wrote down a little note. Is it really the craziness out there that's happening, or is it the way I'm interpreting it? Maybe we're all looking at things a little differently than we used to.
I think it's normal to have a little bit shorter fuse these days, frankly.
But one thing I think I was going to say, giving your employees everything they want and trying to avoid them is a good way to maintain the thing. But all kidding aside, I think one thing that's pointed out to me is how important it is to really have a good team before the stuff hits the fan, and then you can help rely on that to pull you through. How who would have ever thought that we'd have something we had to work on for multiple years as it's looking, but it's definitely, I mean, speaking to the choir, trying times. And yeah, when I saw you were gonna, when Lori was saying you were gonna tell us how to lead through a pandemic in 10 minutes, I was all ready for that. So anyway, yeah, I appreciate your words.
Got it. Thanks for reminding us that building a shared mental model with your team and having a team that has good open communication is key.
Yeah, definitely sometimes walking a tightrope, I can tell you that, in my experience.
Chief McKern?
Well, I want to thank Dr. Carlbom publicly in front of everybody because he has been our leader for the last 18 months. We had him as a new leader, and a lot of us didn't know a lot about him. And let me tell you, it's not uncommon for him to stop in the middle of something and say, "Are you okay today?" So I encourage all of you to do that. Stop after you hear that someone's having a stressful day and ask them, "How are you doing today? How are things going?" And just that little bit of that interaction seems to calm things down to a nicer level. But you're right, everything's I like Dr. Carbon's comment about a short fuse, and so occasionally we see that. Remember that we all answer to our citizens. More so, I think that probably Greg's Christopher Brotherson sees this more than anybody does, is that he answers to a lot of citizens. And so occasionally we just have to step back and remember what the eye on the prize is. And I think we're all doing a great job of 18 months worth of eye on the prize, and hopefully we'll get through all this really well. But Dr. Carbon, thank you for your leadership over the last 18 months. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Chief, and thanks for yours. And I think that's a great reminder, just everyone's dealing with something that we don't know about, and carrying some sort of baggage that we can't tell. And so it's I always just try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. I haven't met anyone yet in my life. Well, I did meet one guy in a weird jumpsuit from the King County Jail with 5 guards, and I had to take my tie off to examine him. That guy probably comes to work to want to do harm to people, but other than that person, most everyone wants to do well and help others. So thanks.
I do notice that Lisa has put a resource, Lisa Thomas has put a resource in the chat box.
I haven't read it myself, but I've heard good things about it, so I just thought I would share it.
Well, as we go forward, all of us might feel steady one day, less steady the next day. If there's an opportunity at this table for us to support anybody in agency leadership in all of the different roles that we all play around our community. I know that Dr. Carlbom has connection to resources, and we are happy to figure out some way to use this table to support all of us as we get through the next 6 months.
Yeah, Lori, I would echo, I have access to some peer counseling folks who would be interested in helping first responders in particular, because they, I think, have a unique role and perspective on life. And then also others who've worked a lot with sort of critical incidents and stress debriefing. I'm still looking for anyone who has a service cat who can come out and help people. I keep finding service dogs, but not service cats. I don't know. Maybe that's the secret. But if anyone has wisdom, please feel free to email me. Lori has my email, or let me know how I can help. And thanks all for all your hard work.
Thank you. Apple, did I see you had a thought?
I did. I'm sorry I had to step away for a second to a phone call. I just wanted to contribute one thing that I'm investigating for, trauma, conflict, and sort of self-management within leadership. I didn't say that very gracefully, but one thing that I got sort of hip to at the beginning of the pandemic was some motivational interviewing strategies to teach our staff, which, they're pretty steeped in, at least those who are familiar in healthcare, to the MI strategy of working with folks around behavior change. But what I found fascinating was a webinar I was on to provide MI training within leadership structures, so that there's more opportunity to have sort of reflective supervision and the ability to process things, and even to, through your colleagues in leadership, work on behavior changes where you're struggling, whether that's in mental health conflicts with work-life balance, what have you. Anyway, I'm not being very articulate, but it's important for leaders to have opportunity to be nurtured and to be heard in the ways that we would offer to our patients and our clients. So I'm trying to reverse the conversation a little bit and make sure that up the leadership that people get that opportunity to.
Thank you. Any other thoughts before we move on to the data portion of our program today? Okay.
I guess I just want to, I couldn't help myself, but give kudos to Greg Brotherton. As far as I always think about, when I get people call and make complaints or whatever it might be, mine are always about law enforcement. And I think most of us, it's always about what we do, but I think if you're a commissioner, it's about everything. And anyway, I feel for you sometimes, Greg, and hopefully that helps with your mental health for today and give you some solace.
You're very appreciated, Commissioner Brotherton.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I think most of the folks here have more stress and encounter more other people encountering trauma than I do. But I would just, reiterate to all the leaders that work-life balance is something that you have to work at. Chopping wood, that you can vent a lot of frustration that's directed at you straight into chopping up some wood. So if you don't chop wood, find something like it that you can restore your balance. But that's yeah, we all deal with it.
Patrick, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, two things. There's always the beach. We're surrounded by them. It's a great place to go. And we have lots of room in our support groups. Hopefully we can help people not end up over at Sheriff Knoll's place, but we have lots of room, and contact me about that. And we'd be delighted to reach out to people to invite them.
All right, thank you. Okay, and you guys see that Dr. Carlbom has put his email in the chat and in the notes that go out. I'll make sure that gets included as well. All right, moving on to the data program. I'm going to share my screen and let Aimee take it away. Let me just get there really quickly. Can you folks see the screen? Okay, let me zip down to the slides. There we go. Aimee, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. So the first slide is looking at Port Townsend Police Department behavioral health incidents over the last 12 months. And over the last 12 months, there were about 1,400 encounters related to behavioral health, with about 86% including a mental health component. Of that, 12% included alcohol and 9% included drugs. Approximately 40% included substances, so about 21% alcohol and 16% drugs.
Any questions on that one?
We can go to the next slide.
I have a question. I'm sorry, Aimee. The 85.6%, that's of the behavioral health incidents, right? Do you have the numbers?
Correct. That is.
Do you have the numbers that what percentage of their calls are behavioral health incidents?
Actually, that is a really fantastic prompt. As we were working through reviewing this data, one of the things that we would like to in the future is be able to provide that insight, because I think providing that context is really important to understanding the impact of in the community.
Great, thank you.
So this is looking at that same set of data over time. So as you can see, there's been a bit of an increase in mental health calls over the past 12 months. So in September, we were at about 70, increasing to about 105, and it's been a pretty steady increase over the last 12 months. The remainder of categories have remained relatively stable. However, we've seen a little bit of an uptick in had been drinking and mental health calls over the past few months. I don't know that we have enough data to point to a long-term trend, but it's something that has been observed over the past few months. Any questions on this slide? Okay, so this is looking at a table of the previous data, just looking at incidents by month of each of these different categories. At the bottom, it's rolled up to average encounters per month. So for mental health encounters, it's an average of 2.6 encounters per day. Encounters for had been drinking and mental health and drugs, and had been drinking were about 1 in every 3 days, drugs 1 in every 4 days, and the other last two categories about 1 in every 10 days. So as you can see, just a strictly mental health call happens most frequently in the community. So this data comes from Discovery Behavioral Health, looking at ITA investigations over time. So approximately 13% of ITA investigations result in an involuntary commitment, with the other 87% falling into the other categories of voluntary inpatient, crisis stabilization, and outpatient mental health, and other referrals. One of the interesting trends that I'm seeing in the data is referred to voluntary outpatient mental health has really increased over the past 12 months. So back in September and October, there were about 13 referrals per month, up to 23 in August. So a pretty significant increase. The other trend that I find interesting in this data is that there was a decrease between September and down to February in other referrals or outcomes, and now we're on a trend back up. I don't know what might be driving that trend, but I think it's something that we need to be aware of and see if there's something that we can correlate that to. So this is looking again at that similar data. This was all of those categories rolled up into one. So there were 424 investigations over this time period. We had a high point in September, again down through February, and now it's on its way back up. It will be interesting to see in the next update of the data whether the trend continues on an upward path, or if this is just a peak and we're headed back down, or what type of cyclical nature this data has. Approximately 43% of referrals were for voluntary outpatient mental health treatment. Can somebody provide maybe some context on what kind of referrals are included in other referral or outcome?
I know that's data that came to us from DBH, but it was Tanya probably who has the insight to that, and she's not here today.
This is Jim. Those other referrals may be things that really didn't really fit our services, or were not mental health services. Would have fit another category that they would need it. As you can see, it's a really small percentage, but I mean, some things where, they didn't really want to have mental health outpatient services, or didn't have the diagnosis to really meet it, potentially. That just because everybody that gets picked up for behavior on the street doesn't necessarily have a mental health issue sometimes. So it might have been due to another source of aggravation or whatever occurred, that behavior to occur. So.
Thanks, Jim.
Good.
Thank you. This is looking at emergency department volumes over the past 12 months. So we had a high point in September with about 78 encounters. And again, I'm sorry, 77 encounters. So 78, I'm sorry. Was down through February with a little blip up in January to a high point of 77 in September. Again, a majority of the encounters are related to mental health and a smaller portion of the encounters related to substance use. So this is looking at those encounters. So this is only 6 months of data. So this is not like the previous slides where we've been looking at 12 months of data. So this is approximately 46% of Jefferson Healthcare's ED and clinic patients were diagnosed with a substance use disorder over the last 6 months. Most frequently, it was an opioid use disorder, followed by other substances, which could include THC, inhalants, or benzo, then methamphetamine and alcohol being the smallest percent. So this is data that comes to us from the jail, looking at different types of encounters each month and looking at the frequency of those encounters. So this data is showing a moderation of substance abuse related issues over the past quarter from the peaks in 2020. So we were in the neighborhood of 17 to 20 between September and January, and we're down to about 12 to 14 over the past few months. There's been a decrease in monthly drug people who have been booked on drug and alcohol charges. So that was a bit of an interesting trend, given some of the other things. MAT inductions, suicidal thoughts, and reported mental health issues are all variable, and we did not see any trends there.
Aimee, could I ask another question? Or this is really to the group,
Absolutely.
I guess, to Sheriff Knoll, but I mean, do you think that those, or I'm not sure, I don't think PT Police is here, but do you think that the reduced number of substance abuse arrests or pickups is because of the legislation and the new policy that the police kind of has to take to things where maybe they're making decisions they wouldn't have made earlier?
I was going to say that in my opinion, that would definitely be an impact, you know, because what was it, mid-July when the laws went into effect? And I know that, yeah, we don't deal with that anymore like we used to.
I see that there's a question in the chat wondering if we capture age in each category, mental health, alcohol, and drug.
In the data set that I was using, I don't have that information, but it may be available from the organization where we received the data. It's just not something I have access to for this.
And I would say that we have come a long way on the normalization of our data. We're not there yet, but this 6 month set, I want to give out a huge shout out to the Sheriff's Department for helping us not only get their data in some normalized way, but also helping me get the data for PTPD because they've been so buried in everything that they've got going on. So big thanks to the Sheriff's Office on that.
Thanks.
A question on the jail. Is that all, are those all bookings or are those, I mean, I see on the right booked on drugs and alcohol charges. Is everybody else already in jail and they just had an incident in jail? That was.
These are all bookings. So all the data minus, I guess, the MAT inductions are all taken at the time of booking. MAT inductions are typically at the time of booking, however, can be delayed depending on when the individual is requesting services.
So the report substance abuse problem, they were booked on something else, but at the time of booking, they also reported.
Right, so a lot of this data, especially the reporting substance use, reporting mental health, reporting suicidal ideation, that is all gathered from our medical intake form. The charges are not necessarily relative to what they're reporting to us. And there was a steep decline in drug-related charges. I believe it was right around the July or June area, where we just saw primarily alcohol-related offenses booked in.
Thank you.
And I would say the alcohol offenses were more likely than not DUI.
Okay. So this next table is looking at the data that was in the previous chart by month, and we can see average monthly encounters of inmates with a substance abuse problem is 15.1, so 1 every 2 days. Reported mental health issues are 9 per month, 1 in 3 days. Obviously, much less frequent are inmates with reported suicidal thoughts. Most days somebody is booked on a drug or alcohol charge, and a MAT induction happens about once every 6 days.
One more
so this
question.
is looking at Jefferson. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I would just while we're on this. Is domestic violence, is that counted in mental health? Or that's kind of random, but I'm just curious. I'm interested in looking at the domestic violence rates throughout the pandemic as well.
No, so no, these were self-reported. And I guess the question that we basically ask is, do you have any behavioral health or diagnoses or issues? And so those are all self-reported. So it isn't related directly to domestic violence charging.
Aimee, Patrick Johnson, I may have missed it, but what's the N? How many total inmates are there that this is drawn from?
Again, this is one of the areas that we have room for improvement. I am not sure what that N is. Maybe David could help us understand what percent of total inmates this might represent.
Yeah, that's something I guess we can certainly include in the data that we supply to you, our monthly bookings, seeing as these are all taken on a monthly basis. But we've been averaging through the pandemic. Well, in 2019, we were averaging 27 inmates a month. I would venture it's a little lower than that right now. Prior to the pandemic, we were averaging 42 a month as a daily population average. So that might give you a little bit of context.
Yeah, and just
thank you.
Maybe everybody knows this already, but because of the pandemic, of course, we tried to limit the amount of people to reduce the risk of an outbreak or something, and to have room for if we needed to quarantine male and female.
Okay, so this is Jefferson County Sheriff Office in detail. Our data, I'm sorry, this is in a similar form, or this is the same format that we have for Port Townsend Police Department. So it's interesting to be able to compare these two sets of data and see how incidents are skewed one way or another. So mental health composes about 72% of behavioral health incidents, which is lower compared to the Port Townsend Police Department. Compared to Port Townsend Police Department, percent of drinking alone is about 2 times higher for Jefferson County. Not necessarily surprising. It's probably related to a higher portion of calls related to DUI. Of their calls, 26% had an alcohol component and 21% had a drug component. Lisa, your question, many of these numbers, people fall into one or more categories. So yes, they may, we may be double counting people or double counting them across categories. So you are correct.
Thank you.
This is, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. So this is data from Jefferson County again, and we've categorized it using the same categories. And then we've looked at it in 2 different time periods. So what we've noticed is between March and April compared to the period of May through August, calls for issues related to mental health increased by more than 50%. So I thought that was something interesting to point out. As we go forward, we'd like to trend the data a bit more, and so it would be interesting to know whether this trend holds or this was just a one-time increase for this 4-month period. This is East Jefferson Fire and Rescue data. This data is only based on primary complaint. It is not like the police department or the sheriff department data. And so 84% of Jefferson or of fire and rescue's calls are related to mental health, which is a similar percent as Jefferson County and Port Townsend Police. So looking at the data, about 20.1 mental health calls per month. So about 2 out of 3 days have a mental health related call.
I think this is another bit of data. We thought it might be useful to have the total calls to give some context to the numbers that we're looking at. I knew you were thinking that, Commissioner Brotherton.
Jim, I've got a quick question. So I know we've talked about this before of how to sort out how many of these calls are maybe multiple calls regarding one incident or the same person, and there's no way, but we have figured a way to sort that out. So you might have a person that has 3 calls in one day. Those are not 3 distinct calls, really. It's the same person that starts in point A and we get a call, point B. And so really, how many people are we really representing here? It's really hard to figure out sometimes. So
it's a good point.
Question for you, Aimee, Chief McCurran, Cool Scene Fire. Of this 80%, because East Jeff also does interfacilities, it would be in kind of echoing what Jim's question was. Do we know how many of these are pre-hospital setting that would be, we got to see them first in some kind of interaction, or how many of these were interfacility from Jefferson Healthcare to another facility? That'd be good to know if how these 286 calls, how many were interfacilities. If that makes any sense, because that makes a difference. Is it a 911 call or is it an interfacility call for transports? Because from the standpoint of the sheriff's office, those 911s might involve the sheriff where the interfacilities would not involve the sheriff. So if that helps.
And I know in the past.
That's a very good question.
I know in the past.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I know in the past, I can't say this for sure this time around because Aimee's more familiar with this data, but this data was typically the 911 calls. And then we had a whole separate set of data for those transfer, for that transfer data. That's typically how they present it. And so we can go back and take a look, but I believe this is just the 911 calls, not the calls that are then transferred from Jefferson to somewhere else.
I think you're right. We did not get that data this time around.
Yeah.
From East Jefferson. Commissioner Brotherton, did you have a thought? Nope. One of the things that sorry, go ahead. One of the things that I know is so we're getting data right now from East Jefferson Fire and Rescue, and of course they are not the only game in town when it comes to EMS services here in East Jefferson County. And so in the future, we look to how we might be able to get that broader scope of data so that we're really seeing the full picture of our county and not just sort of the locus right up here where East Jefferson Fire and Rescue is.
I guess I do have a question, Lori. Sorry. I'm just wondering, I've heard some of the fire chiefs before talking about how they're often transporting folks with behavioral health issues. And I guess I'm wondering, first of all, I love seeing the data parallel, as you say, Lori, real improvements. So kudos to all that contributed to that. But wondering about, I guess, what kind of service was provided? Is that something that's too granular to get in this data set? Did they give them a ride or did they give service on site and triage it there? Is that reasonable?
So this is a question I can follow up on. Chief Black wasn't able to be here today, but we can certainly follow up and see if we can address that in some way, shape, way, or form in our next 6-month block of data. Thank you.
Not to make busy work.
Laura, I also wonder, this is David Carlbom, I wonder about asking a little bit more about just how things are coded. So if you see someone with a car crash from a substance use disorder, I bet it doesn't fall in this behavioral health category, even though many of us would say, oh, the person used drugs and passed out while driving and drove their car into a tree. Should that person fit in this category? Should they not? I'm confident that probably the firefighters are not thinking about that person as fitting in this category. And so it's just sort of interesting to think about, like, what are the boundaries and are we clear across fire districts so that they all code the same so that the data makes sense?
Absolutely. And that is a journey. So we look forward to how we can sort of take the next step in that journey going forward. Aimee, am I on the right slide now?
Yes, you are. Thank you. So this again is looking at Jefferson County data, looking at inmate assessments. So 60% of assessments result in a referral to MAT and 54% to mental health services. Again, people can fall into many of these categories. And so we see a vast majority of people with referrals to for needing assistance for transportation or other social determinants of health, such as housing or employment. This is safe harbor data, again, looking at 6 months rather than the 12 months we've looked at in many of the other cases. For safe harbor, about 70% were diagnosed with alcohol use disorder, 13% with opioid use disorder, 13% with methamphetamine use disorder, and 62% were diagnosed with other SUD. Interestingly, the mix of patients is very different from safe harbor as compared to Jefferson Healthcare. So perhaps it's a different population that each of the organizations are seeing, but it's quite different in terms of breakdown between the different categories. And really a great statistic here is 75% of safe harbor clients have been receiving MAT services for 3 or more months without interruption. Okay, our final slide here is from Recovery Cafe, looking at member data. So between January and June, so again, this is a different time period than most of the other data. There were 46 current members, 5 weekly recovery circles were held, over 1,000 meals served, more than 200 outreach hours, more than 700 member contacts, and 2 School for Recovery classes were held. Of members, 57% struggle with substance use, 45% struggle with alcohol use, 44 have been homeless in the past, while 19% are currently experiencing homelessness. 40% struggle with mental health, 31% experience a lot of trauma, and 18% have experienced domestic violence and or sexual assault.
So this data, as I said, it's been a work in progress and it continues to be. But one of the things I have to say is getting the data from this last 6 months from everybody was so much more streamlined than it has been over the past 2 years. And so I want to send out a great vote of thanks to everybody who put in time to get me that data, ending your data period on August 31st and being able to present about it within 6 weeks is almost Herculean. And we're very happy to have been able to do that. I wanted you to just have a sense of what I am thinking about going forward. And there are some questions also that you brought up in the course of this presentation that we'll add to this list. We know that we're going to be having DBH and the Recovery Navigator program start up, which we want to make sure, however we're collecting data for that program, gets properly integrated to what we're trying to do here so that as a community, we have an understanding of how that programming is impacting our system overall. We have just had all of those folks that have moved from the fairgrounds over to Mill Street, and it will be interesting to see if our data, if our numbers show that change going from the Port Townsend Police Department over to the county sheriff numbers. That I think will be interesting. That consistency is something that we're celebrating. For sure, using that longer term set of consistent data to identify trends like the impact of 1310, being able to gather those total calls from EMS and law enforcement data. One of the things that we saw was referral issues. We know that we're making referrals. How can we track down whether or not those referrals are being realized? I think is something that is maybe a little bit further out, but something that we're working toward. We'd like to drill down on COVID impacts, and that might be even easier to do sort of next 6 months or even a year out that we'll be continuing to do this. We were talking about the possibility of exploring having EMS track comorbidities for a month just to see what that did to the data, but it isn't something that we've decided on. And then that exploring how to procure the data from the broader Jefferson County so that we have a better picture of what's happening here in our East Jefferson area is something that we're going to see if we can explore and do something about here in the next 6 months. What I can't underscore enough is how much having this data and the work that we've done on it over the past 2 years has set a foundation, not just for us to get funding, which is, it's always useful to get funding, but to be able to create a picture for ourselves collectively of what's happening with our behavioral health system and where we can shore it up. And I hope that this is something that we continue to work on with the same sort of, what's the word that I want? You guys have been really dedicated about it, and I hope that we can continue to be dedicated about it. And I'd like to thank HFPD for taking just a boatload of data that I handed them 2 weeks ago and turning it into this. It's not something I could ever do, so their expertise is very welcome. Both Aimee, thank you, you did a wonderful job with it. Lisa, providing us with that continuity and thinking about these bigger questions as we go into the next 6 months. I'm really looking forward to working with you guys on that. And now we're going to quickly go. I know we've only got 3 minutes. If folks can stay longer, maybe I should ask who needs to jump off really quickly before Jolene does her overview of what's going on. Okay, Dr. Carlbom, thank you so much for being here. We'll look forward to circling back as we think about the data. Okay, all right, I'm going to go on to Jolene's part of the program, and Jolene, the floor is yours.
I just wanted to touch real quickly on the Recovery Navigator program, just giving a little bit of history. It is intended, it kind of comes out of all that Blake decision movement of activity that identifies needs in the community, and it is intended as a referral source for law enforcement as diversion for individuals with SUD or co-occurring disorders within the community, so substance use disorder or co-occurring substance use and mental health. It is intended very clearly to be a street outreach program. We expect of the 2 outreach workers and case managers, probably 90% of their time will be spent in the field, that they will be responding where people are to provide support and assistance. And the intent is also to meet those people where they are. So they are at. So there is no requirement for sobriety to participate in this program. Many of the folks will have numerous contacts. So this could be somebody has a contact with law enforcement, a referral is made, and they just need help connecting to OLICAP for a housing program. And they may have a single or 2 contacts with the outreach worker. You may have an individual who is not interested in accepting services at this time, but may have repeated contacts over a period of months until they feel like they're ready and have a trusting relationship enough to access additional services. So it is a very broad program in being focused on the individuals who are needing the service and being able to provide what support is going to benefit them at that time. So we are still waiting on the Healthcare Authority. We did submit our plan on October 1st. As planned, we were informed Tuesday of this week that plans that we were told a 1 week turnaround. We were told last week we would get them this week, the week of the 11th. We were told on Tuesday that it were coming Wednesday afternoon. It is Thursday afternoon. We still have not seen it. We are waiting with bated breath. So we will update as soon as we have the information. So this plan has to be approved before we can move forward with our plan. Currently, the plan in Jefferson County is to work with Discovery Behavioral Health to roll out that Recovery Navigator team. That does include 4 positions, a project manager position, a case manager, and 2 outreach workers who would be doing direct care in the community and be available for referral. The initial timeframe for that position is a minimum of 9 to 5, 7 days a week. We are hopeful that it will be expanded and that we would look at hours outside of that. We did not choose the hours. That was dictated to us. I have very much expressed at every point that after hours is much more beneficial when we're looking at this type of program. So we are going to do our best to be able to manage that. That could mean that some of those staff work different hours through the whole program. So it would not be only hopefully 9 to 5. And that is our hope. And also partnering with other Navigator type programs within the community as well. We do see this not as a crisis response program, but kind of as a pre-crisis program. So if somebody kind of has a contact, this is not, hey, we need a crisis outreach to consider an involuntary detention. This is many steps before that to provide more diversion related services. That is the expectation of this program. And so it is very separate from our crisis program, even though it would be with the same provider. And it is very peer oriented. So there is a big focus on equity, diversion, and peer focused services. So we are excited to get our final information to be able to move forward and roll this program out. We originally were given a timeline of October 1st for the plan, November 1st for rollout. As you can tell, we are running up against that line with not having enough information that we need to be able to do that, but we are moving as swiftly as we can. So we will keep everyone updated as we move forward. We are doing this again in all 3 counties. So the team in Jefferson is part of also a larger team, and that team will be doing we'll be working in partnership with existing community entities as we move forward. There will be some working groups that will come out of this to be able to work on the care coordination across. So I love seeing the data that we just saw and how we can hopefully impact some of those folks to get them services at many different junctures in the future. Moving on just to kind of some other related topics. So we did put out our request for proposal. We did not have any requests for Jefferson County. This table on the previous slide that is mental health block grant RFP services list, these were eligible on the mental health block grant side. The substance abuse block grant were similar, but we did Lori, can you go back 1 slide?
Sure.
So just that table on the right related to the RFP, these were services that were eligible to be bid on. And again, we received 0 bids across all 3 counties for the mental health block grant. And we received no bids from Jefferson for either substance abuse block grant or mental health block grant. Can we go back to the last slide? Also just wanted to mention another new program coming on board, the Peer Pathfinder from Incarceration. There is currently a jail transitions program that kind of faded during COVID, probably the last 1.5 years, when that occurred across all 3 counties. It wasn't just in Jefferson, but the state has added additional staffing, so a half of a peer to add and enhance that program. So that program is intended to assist individuals coming out of incarceration for up to 120 days to connect them to any variety of services. So we are meeting with Jim and his team about how to get that one added on. We just got some additional information related to budget and expectations related to that program. So we are rolling out many layers of programs, as you can tell. And also wanted to mention that there is a peer enhancement that just came, information just came to us. So there will be a peer enhancement for crisis teams also across the state and so within our region. And again, still waiting on really specific information, but we do expect that each crisis team, so again, run out of Discovery Behavioral Health and with Jim's team, would have additional funding to add additional peer support to the crisis response team. And I will continue to keep you updated as we still have additional information coming in related to new programs that are rolling forward. And yeah, but that's about all I can say right now. We'll keep you updated as we get the information that we need to be able to share more fully. Any questions?
I'm hoping that phone stops ringing in my background. Hold on one second. Thank you, Jolene.
You're very welcome.
Yes, there was, I was going to have Ann Dane here, who also works with the BHAC, the 0.1%. And of course, one of our goals is with the well, it's not my goal, but the goal of BHAC is that funding is meant for sort of a funding of last resort. And so we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of the state or federal funding dollars before we dip into that. And I think there might be an opportunity for us to do that more effectively here in Jefferson County. We might be able to talk about that more and more intelligently at our next meeting. And speaking quickly,
and I will, can I just share, Lori, that these conversations are happening not just in Jefferson County. I met with Kitsap County, their 1/10 committee last week to provide them some information around this, and they had very similar questions. So it is coming up kind of across the board.
So it's just a great opportunity for us to figure out how we can optimize all of the funding that we get, use it well.
Our agency is always happy to apply or you know, be that entity because we handle CSBG, CDBG, we handle those federal funds. So we have those mechanisms in place. So I'm certainly happy to talk with anyone who's interested. If there's some opportunities we could still dive back into, like, yeah, I'll do it. So.
Thank you, Cherish. Okay, for our next meeting, we'll be hearing from Kelli Parcher, who's going to be putting forward a proposal for some funding that we might take from the grant and put her direction or put the direction of the Pfeiffer House. I'd like to go through a bit of milestones for the 1-year completion that we've done just here at the end of August with our RCORP grant. It has come to my attention that somehow inadvertently the Believe in Recovery data, I don't know whether it got mixed up in how I pushed it over to HFPD, but we are going to feature that in a big one overview at our next meeting, and my apologies to Gabby. And then I have been trying to get Chief Olson here from the Port Townsend Police Department to sort of address the group as a whole for us to get more of a sense of him. I'm sorry, we haven't seen him here for the last couple meetings, maybe 3 meetings. So I'll see if I can track that down. Love to have him here in front of this group as we move forward. Any other thoughts before I let you all go? And thank you so much for staying a little bit over here. We did pack a lot in today's agenda. Okay, everybody go forth. Have a great evening. See you next time.
Take care.
Thank you.
Here, everybody.